How we doing, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Richie Hicks Jr. Sports Podcast. I am your host, Richie. Wanted to apologize for starting later than I expected to. I had made an announcement earlier today that we were going to be starting at midnight, but I was actually in the process of finishing up WWE's Elimination Chamber, and I couldn't speak on it properly unless I finished actually watching the card. I was not going to wake up at 5 a.m. on a work day to see the results. That was just a little too early for me. But an excellent show nonetheless, and one that I want to elaborate on tonight. In addition to that, going to hit on the No Bull Tour, which we unfortunately ran out of time for just the other day. I'm also going to speak on why my New York Knicks just can't beat the darn Boston Celtics. And we've got Cody Bellinger staying put in Chicago. He is going to stay with the Chicago Cubs. If you haven't already, please make it a point to like and subscribe to the channel, the Richie Hicks Jr. Sports Podcast on YouTube. And just bear with me. Going to link this out to a couple of my socials, and we are going to get going on some of these topics. Just letting you know, this is going to be a wrestling-centric show for the most part. The cool thing about the Elimination Chamber is that it really opens up the picture for WrestleMania, and we're going to be starting there. I gotta say, Perth, Australia, just a great venue for this show. The crowd was just electric. It kind of looked like the kind of crowd that you would get at a soccer game almost. I just really enjoyed the passion of the fans. I think the fans, especially when it comes to sports entertainment, have so much to do with how well the product is, how good the product is received. And this was a hell of a pay-per-view. Social media megastar Logan Paul, who has transitioned into pro wrestling, screwed over Randy Orton for the United States title. Essentially, that's now going to be what it is. This was a match for the rights to face Seth Rollins for the World Championship title. And Logan Paul's actions definitely screwed over Randy Orton. Great storytelling. So I believe that now you have a WrestleMania match. And in addition to that, AJ Styles screwed over LA Knight. He was not even part of this match. He came in with a steel chair, did some damage. I think that is definitely probably a day one match, LA Knight facing AJ Styles. I want to hit more on the Orton situation with Logan Paul. Logan Paul was basically in the chamber, just waiting it out. You have the countdown, and then a new wrestler enters the fray. It's one of the more unpredictable matches of the year because, WWE does pay-per-views basically once a month. But I really enjoyed the way that they did the storytelling here. Randy Orton had hit Logan Paul with his RKO. Paul was kind of out of commission on the outside. And this was only to be kind of slithering and waiting for an opportunity to screw over Randy Orton. Orton had hit Drew McIntyre with his finisher, only to be knocked out by Logan Paul's brass knuckles. Now, of course, this is storytelling. Wrestling isn't real. We know this. But when you see this, I guess from the common sense standpoint, you're like, how come the other guys didn't bring in the brass knucks? Hasn't Kevin Owens been through enough with this as well? But Logan Paul plays the villain really well. And in that regard, he is main event material. But he's really made an excellent transition into being a full-time wrestler, and he's really good. Becky Lynch wins the Elimination Chamber, and she will be on her way to face Rhea Ripley for the Raw Women's title. This is a great build-up gradually because I'll be honest, going into the Elimination Chamber, I wasn't even sure that Rhea Ripley was going to get past Nia Jax. Definitely a great challenge. And Rhea Ripley is from Australia, so she was performing in front of 13 different family members. She, of course, defeated Nia Jax. And Nia Jax is just a real imposing figure in the ring. Just moves really exceptionally for a bigger star. And I got to say, good storytelling yet again. I think Becky, I don't see a scenario from a believability standpoint why she should beat Rhea Ripley. So I actually believe Rhea Ripley will continue her reign as the champion. The biggest story going into WrestleMania was actually The Rock, which on a previous show I had made mention was likely going to wrestle against his family member, Mr. Roman Reigns. The WWE Universe definitely displayed their displeasure with that. And The Rock, being the professional that he is, said, you know what? I'll turn heel, we'll salvage it, and I'm going to join the Bloodline, which is his, Roman Reigns' faction. So Cody Rhodes for the undisputed title, barring some random injury, that is what's going to happen. And WrestleMania nowadays, going back to the pandemic, is a 2-night event. Night one, I think you're going to see Seth Rollins join forces with Cody to take on Roman Reigns and The Rock. It's going to be very good. I would not be the least bit surprised if somehow, some way, The Rock is involved in the main event too, because going back to last year, in Roman Reigns' first defense against Cody Rhodes, he had help from the Uso brothers. So I expect that, starting tomorrow on Raw, they're going to really ramp up the storytelling here to see which way this goes. And that is essentially going to be the big main event. Io Sky versus Bayley for the Raw brand women's title. No surprise there. That was pretty much decided at the conclusion of the Royal Rumble. Bloodline members formerly, one is still with, one is no longer. Main event Jey Uso versus his brother Jimmy. I think this goes without saying that this would be a phenomenal match. And to my knowledge, this is the first time that two brothers will face each other on a Mania card since the late Owen Hart faced his older brother, Bret Hart. If I'm the bookers, this is definitely the opener for WrestleMania. Going back to Mania 10, Bret versus Owen is by far considered the greatest WrestleMania opener. I think this can supersede that. I think you got to do it. A newer WrestleMania tradition has been the Andre the Giant Battle Royal. Kevin Owens, Alpha Academy members, and essentially anyone who isn't on the regular card will likely compete in this match. I could see Chad Gables possibly getting the push to face Gunther for the Intercontinental title. I'm going to hit you with that here. The greatest thing that anybody could do with the Intercontinental title, which essentially going back to its earlier roots, was normally the second best wrestler in the company, the number 2 man in the company. Guys like Macho Man Randy Savage, the late, great Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig as well, both of them no longer with us, wore that well as the number 2 men in the company. It kind of got downgraded to where you weren't necessarily the number 2 guy in the company while holding that strap. Ultimate Warrior wore it well. This dude Gunther has brought more credibility back to that title. And I think in order to get to main event status, he has to drop the title. And when I think about who would be a great representative, Sami Zayn is honestly the guy who makes the most sense to me. So I do believe that that's the direction that goes in. We've got Finn Balor and Damian Priest versus R-Truth and The Miz for the SmackDown Raw titles. This is not official. This is what I believe should happen. At the age that R-Truth is, and even a guy like The Miz, who has humbly kind of come down to getting more guys over, I think this is a great way to honor a guy like Truth, who's always been a company man. He's in his 50s now. Give him like that legitimate WrestleMania moment. And the reason why I think Finn and Damian Priest have to drop their belts also is because the same reason why Gunther has to drop his. I believe that Damian Priest is going to get that legitimate push to concentrate more on the storyline for Money in the Bank. You get 1 year when you win that to cash that in against any champion in the company for the better part of a year. I think there's like 2 months that he has left on it. And at a lot of different pay-per-views or even on live TV, Monday Night Raws, things of that nature, Priest has made failed attempts to cash it in. But I do believe that in order for that to happen, he has to free himself up from the tag division. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen here. We got a comment flying in. Mike Zappi. Still in the poker tournament final table, first in chips. I'll comment on here. All right, Zap. Sounds like a plan. His birthday's coming up. I'm going to make sure I didn't miss anything on the wrestling side of things before I continue to go forward. I do want to speak on, I've said it on previous shows, but the women's division in professional wrestling in the WWE has just gotten to a point where you can trust your women superstars to wrap up shows on the main event level and be neck and neck with the men. So when I think about how far the women's division has come, it's incredible. And Rhea Ripley is just so believable. When you look at her size, her athleticism, her look, her personality, Rhea Ripley just really tore the house down. It was great storytelling. It was in her home country of Australia, as I already alluded to at the top of the hour. 13 family members there. And, taking out just a real legitimate challenge, because Nia Jax, as I alluded to also, is a very imposing figure. But I believe that despite all the controversy going on with this company, with Vince McMahon no longer in the picture, with the allegations, and now most recently, there are a lot of things going on that his daughter, Stephanie, who is, of course, the wife of COO Triple H Paul Levesque, Stephanie McMahon may have been in the know and potentially helped hide some of these things for years. So there's a lot of drama going on at the top, but the product is actually, in my opinion, doing very well for itself. And I've been a WWE fan since I was a kid. It's kind of been a love-hate over the last few years. I backed away, kind of getting back in now. And I must admit, one of the things that drew me back in is how sensational the women's division has gotten. When you go from a TV 14 rating to more of a safe PG kind of thing, no blood is one of the attributes that goes into the new form of programming. As an old school wrestling fan, I don't necessarily like that. But, while the Attitude Era will have its place in history and was good, I think that this women's reclamation project that has become great with their division was necessary, because the sad truth is, I think it minimized the talents of a lot of women back then when it was just basically showing skin. So I am proud of the women performers in WWE. I think that they have come such a long way where they actually carry a lot of these shows. And the God's honest truth is, when it was only subjected to solely being eye candy, I do not believe that the performers back then had an honest chance of being taken serious past an object of sexuality. And to be honest with you, I'm actually happy that this has evolved into that. Flipping it over to the No Bull Tour, I want to talk some Scottie Pippen. He's taken his show on the road with former teammates Horace Grant and Luke Longley. Okay, the 2020 show, The Last Dance, which aired during the pandemic, had Michael Jordan serve as basically the shot caller of his recant of how the dynasty years went for the Chicago Bulls, which culminated in 6 world titles. And The Last Dance was essentially honing in on that final season. Now, Scottie Pippen, out of all of the former Bulls, seemed to take this the most personal. He has written a book. It was called Unguarded. He was ripped to smithereens by a guy like, blown to smithereens rather, like a guy like a Stephen A. Smith back then. Stephen A. Smith also spoke out very recently about Scottie Pippen and got into a debate with former NBA player Kendrick Perkins. Perkins is on the side of saying that Michael, Scottie both deserve to tell their form of the truth. Now, where Stephen A. is coming from is that when you're a Michael Jordan, and when you have basically said time and time again that Scottie Pippen was your greatest teammate, he feels that the court of opinion, public opinion, will never be on the side of a Scottie Pippen because, quite frankly, he said, while Pippen was great in his own way, and while he will be remembered as possibly the best number two, he's not Michael Jordan. That goes without saying. And, you know, I think where Pippen's coming from is that he feels he was villainized in The Last Dance because of the infamous 94 Game 3, where he refused to come out from the bench to throw an inbound pass to teammate Tony Kukoc. Phil Jackson essentially didn't call his number to take the last shot. Kukoc makes the shot over Anthony Mason. The Bulls ultimately lost the series in 7 hard-fought games. This was the Jordanless Bulls. And from a legacy standpoint, I think Pippen watching this on The Last Dance and knowing that Jordan was the executive producer of all this, I think he took it very personal on how he was villainized. Another person who was villainized on The Last Dance was also general manager, the late Jerry Krause. It was a very ugly scene when they were honoring Krause and his wife was getting booed. His widow was getting booed. I think that was very low of the Chicago fans. But at the same time, taking into consideration that the villainization of Jerry Krause was for all to see during a time that the world was shut down during that Last Dance. And that was Kendrick Perkins' point back to Stephen A. Smith. Now, Horace Grant, Luke Longley, Scottie Pippen are in Australia doing this no bull tour, and they are basically debunking a lot of the Last Dance for the public to kind of hear their side of some of this. I enjoyed The Last Dance. I thought The Last Dance was done really well, but I must admit that if there's anything, perhaps you would want to hear a little more about more of the Bulls stars. I know that Steve Kerr was very much involved in being shown in a good light, but I also think you have to take into consideration that Steve Kerr is still a member of the NBA because he happens to be the most prominent coach in the league who has led the Golden State Warriors to 4 world championships. Got a comment coming in. Mike Zappi. This is going to be very interesting because Luke Longley is very loyal to Jordan. Yes, you're right about that. He always was. But like anything else, you know, he clearly thinks for himself by going on tour with Pippen. So I do tend to agree that it will be very interesting, Mike. It's wild, dude. It's wild. It really is. I want you guys to get at me in the comments and let me know what you guys truly think about, you know, these guys making an attempt to debunk The Last Dance. Was it fair the way Michael portrayed his teammates? Michael Jordan, when he was in his prime, was literally the most recognizable NBA player in the world, not just for the NBA, but I'm talking about pop culture. I'm talking about he was on the level of a guy like a Michael Jackson, where anywhere in the world he was recognizable. There are only a few guys that play pro sports that have that kind of global impact around the world. Michael Jordan was that kind of guy. And, you know, his star was huge. I mean, this is a guy who's still relevant when you just factor in the amount of dollars that his sneakers still bring in. And although he hasn't played an NBA game in over 2 decades, he is still revered by most people that follow basketball and recognized by most people that follow, play, or cover basketball as still the greatest player to ever do it. You will have people that will suggest that it's LeBron James. You might have some old timers that will suggest that it's Magic Johnson or maybe Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, more so Jabbar. But nowhere do you have people that will ever say that Michael Jordan is not in this conversation. Just give me 1 second, guys. I apologize. I'm on a show, but I should be done in about 6 minutes. No, you don't. We're going to hit on why the New York Knicks can't beat the Celtics. Well, it's easy for me. The New York Knicks can't beat the Boston Celtics because the New York Knicks aren't healthy. I do not want to take anything away from the Boston Celtics. I believe that they are actually the most talented, deepest, and best roster in the National Basketball Association. But when you're missing the likes of OG as well as Julius Randle, you're not going to be able to beat a team that has the weapons of a Boston Celtics team. Um, the Knicks have to get healthy in time for the true measure to see where they exactly rank with the Boston Celtics. I cannot make that determination until the Knicks are completely healthy. The only thing that I could determine is that you play who's on your schedule and you play whoever, regardless of who's missing. Teams have overcome this. I think the Knicks are still having a hell of a season, despite the fact that Randall might not even return this year. He might opt for season ending surgery. But until I see the final product of the Knicks completely healthy, I will not be able to determine how good they could be. I think they are very good, though. And I still think that even as of right now, they have a legitimate shot to go to the Eastern Conference Finals when you consider that the injury to Joel Embiid has really messed up the Philadelphia 76ers. When you consider that even bringing in Doc Rivers to Milwaukee hasn't been able to exactly figure out the puzzle, so to speak. If anything, they've done worse since Doc has taken over. So to be continued, so to speak, in terms of where the Knicks are going to end up. But make no mistake, the Boston Celtics are the best team in the NBA. My New York Rangers finally lost a game tonight. I cannot complain at the level they've been playing and during that stadium series, smacking all of their rivals. 10 of 11, I'll take it anytime. Before I get out of here, I want to hit on Cody Bellinger. He's staying put after extended time as a free agent. 3 years, 80 mil to the Chicago Cubs, where he played last year. Scott Boras can't be happy. That's all I could say, because this is a lot less than what he was aiming for his clients. And I think more so than the Cubs getting a good bargain and a nice leader for one of the younger teams on the come up, I think what's nice about Bellinger there is just flat out veteran leadership. And I think he is the best fit. I know the Yankees flirted with the idea before they traded for Verdugo and Soto. But the bottom line here, as far as I'm concerned, is that this is going to be interesting to see how this affects some of the other players represented by Scott Boras, because he has historically been known for bending over teams and getting the most money possible. But the Chicago Cubs did right, and it's still a quality deal. It's just about half of what most of the experts expected. They were talking 6 years and something a lot closer to 200 mil, like in the 150, 160 range. But I think Cody Bellinger kind of saw what the market was and said, I want to play baseball, so let's make a deal. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Blake Snell and Jordan Montgomery, as well as a guy who a lot of people have forgotten about, a Trevor Bauer, who was unjustly kind of pushed out of MLB because of allegations that essentially have been proven to be false at this point. I would love to see a team like the New York Yankees, my guys, take a shot on a Trevor Bauer and tell him and Garrett Cole to sit in a room together and get over their little dispute. It's about winning. It's not about necessarily being in love with all your teammates. Until next time, I am Richie. Thank you for watching. Announcements to come for our next show, and I hope all of you have a great night.